NBA teams will hit the All-Star break in a few days, but here we are just getting started. I'm Adam Kaufman, and you are watching the debut edition of DKTV's Pre-Lock Live. Welcome. We're going to have a lot of fun. 14 games tonight, an immense slate, nearly every single club in action. Cavs home against the slumping Pacers, obviously without Kevin Love. He's banged up, out at least 6 weeks. Hawks at the Clippers. Celtics have won 10 out of 11. They're home against the Sixers, though Avery Bradley and Jaylen Brown remain out. Kings have won 4 straight. They're at Golden State, and all of that just the tip of the iceberg. As I said, it's going to be an entertaining evening looking at those games, and more importantly, we're all going to learn an awful lot about lineup strategy, who to play, who to avoid, and good news, you right there, I'm talking to you. You're going to be a big part of this show too. If you have a question or a comment on how to set your lineups, you just want to know how all this works, it's okay. If you need advice, we're here. You've come to the right place. Leave your note on Twitter with the hashtag DKTV. We'll search, we'll find it. Our analysts will give you an answer between now and when lineups lock at 7 o'clock Eastern. But over the next almost an hour, I'm going to be joined by DK analysts Adam Levitan, Pierce Dietrich, Jeff Ulrich. But first, and before all of that, let's head right out to the DK Live newsroom and meet Alex Jankowski. What's going on, buddy?
Plethora of players that are in the pool. Every team minus just the Wizards and Bulls are in action tonight. So pretty much across the board, looking at point guard specifically, there are just a glut of options to go to. Traditionally also, the game before the All-Star break, a lot of teams might rest some guys, try to take advantage of that near week-long break that they're going to have. We haven't seen much of that yet. We thought the Nuggets might do that with Wilson Chandler, listing him as out earlier today with an illness. They've now upgraded him to questionable, so we'll see if he is able to give it a go. And the Cavaliers have also said nobody's resting tonight outside of obviously J.R. Smith and Kevin Love. So we'll see what happens. You just got to be sure to stay locked in for the rest of this hour.
So that's a good little overall setting for this thing, but let's dive a little deeper. The two teams with the night off, the Wizards and Bulls, as you mentioned, everyone else is playing. How should people be looking at this slate overall when it comes to lineup strategy?
Well, that's an interesting question. Certainly one we're going to dive into. You can either go with the stars versus scrubs debate there, start off with a couple of the higher priced option guys, or what this slate affords you is a bunch of those middle price guys that'll give you the higher floors, and you can roll the dice with them.
Couple of trades recently. How are those moves going to affect the players with their new teams and anyone that's going tonight?
Well, yeah, that's just it. Trade deadline's 8 days away, but we've already seen a couple of big men on the move. Mason Plumlee and Yusuf Nurkic will be making their debuts tonight for the Nuggets and Blazers, respectively. Plumlee's an interesting case. His salary's dropped about $2,500 just because now he'll be slotting in behind Nikola Jokic. But the Nuggets have 4, maybe 5 guys out tonight if Chandler can't go. So expect to see them probably both on the floor together at some point. Now, the trade that happened yesterday, Toronto's Serge Ibaka and Orlando's Terrence Ross, they both wanted to try and give it a go. Terrence Ross has passed his physical. No word yet if he's playing. Serge Ibaka will not be playing for the Raptors tonight. Now, neither of them could be accruing points for DraftKings tonight anyway, so it's more just to see how they fit with their new teams. Especially Aaron Gordon now moving back to the 4 for the Magic is something that I think a lot of people will have their eye on tonight, given that he was so successful last year at that position.
One of the most interesting things to watch tonight, we're going to talk a whole lot about it, is the fact that James Harden is not shooting guard eligible, I think for the first time all year, one of the first times anyways, strictly a point guard. Do you view him any differently now?
You are correct in that this is the first time this year that he is a point guard only. And I think you have to view him differently. We'll break it down in terms of, is he now a must fade or not? But it significantly alters the approach to the shooting guard position. Now that he's exclusively in that deep point guard pool, DeMar DeRozan becomes the most expensive shooting guard on the night, and he's only at $7,900. So, you're going to have to kind of pick and choose how you want to approach shooting guard. It's a lot different now that you don't have Harden just to plug right in there.
How about tonight's injuries? What do we know? Anything big?
No, I mean, like I had said, Wilson Chandler's the biggest one right now. Lavoy Allen was just listed as doubtful for the Pacers, so looking at maybe Glenn Robinson III or Kevin Seraphin hopping into the starting lineup there. But no, Patrick Patterson also will be out for the Raptors. So that's about it for now. Expecting a lot more, though, as the hour progresses.
All right, Alex, thanks a lot. We'll be sure to check in with you again throughout the show for updates, so stay glued to Twitter, obviously. Alex, just one member of our starting lineup tonight. Let's welcome in a couple more guys that have kind of peeked through the curtain a little bit already, Pierce and Jeff. You probably know these guys from Matchups Breakdown, our football show, among other things. Guys, how are you?
Doing well.
I'm doing good. I feel like we're talking about NFL here with 14 games on the slate today.
Yeah, I know it seems that way. I'm glad you guys are with us. And, let's jump right in because we have a lot to cover now before lineups lock. And the first question, Pierce, is going to go to you. We've already been talking about how to maneuver around a 14-game slate, and we're going to do more of that, obviously. But how do you identify your stud, that one guy, when there are so many games?
Well, I mean, it's probably pretty easy to say Westbrook and Harden are the stud, and they could get you 60 to 70 points. But with so many games, do you really need to spend up on these guys? Because you can find value across the board. Sure, they're going to take a huge chunk out of – I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there. If you're trying to hit a GPP, the 400-point mark might be possible today. So Harden and Westbrook definitely going to take a big chunk out of that scoring. They're going to take a big chunk out of your salary. And it's not like they're going to hit 8X. They'll probably hit 7X, but 8 times value. And when you get so many games, it's within reason that you can roster a team full of guys that average 8 to 9X today. So, I mean, let's just take, for example, let's say Westbrook hits 70 points. Or a guy like Rubio, he gets 50 points. Obviously, 50 is less than 70, but you save $4,000 in salary. And if you're getting 7 points per 1,000, that's about, 28 more points you could add to Rubio. So technically, Rubio in the savings on a game with so many ways to build a lineup, I think that's the better route than to spend up. Of course, Westbrook is fine. It's safe. But if you want to be a little bit more risky trying to win the GPPs, I don't need to go up to the 12,000 or 10,000 range.
Well, and Boogie Cousins, he went for, 72.5 last night? So it's not like this never happens. You just need to have a monster night, obviously.
Well, I mean, you can get 70, but I don't know if 70 from Westbrook really guarantees you anything with so many games to choose from.
All right, let's do the first chase fade of the night for both of you guys. So, Jeff, you'll get involved here. Now, if people out there, you don't know how this works, it's very easy. I'm going to give these two guys a topic. They each get 15 seconds to tell me basically if they're in or out on the issue. I'll pick a meaningless winner. Doesn't mean anything at all. And then one of these guys will get to be sensitive, I guess, for the rest of the show, or at least until they win a topic. So this one statement right here, mid-salary players have more upside than stars versus scrubs on a big night. Again, mid-salary players, more upside than stars versus scrubs on a big night. Jeff, lead us off. Chase or fade?
I'll fade that. On a big slate like this, usually that means there's a lot more value plays, guys near the min price who are in play. Maybe not so tonight, but on the long term, these big slates kind of more conducive to stars and scrubs. So paying up for the big guys are generally a better spot. So I guess I'm fading the idea that the mid-price players are better.
All right, what do you think, Pierce?
Well, I'm going to chase this. I kind of alluded to this earlier. I think a lot of people are going to lean towards stars and scrubs in these kind of moments, but there are a lot of guys in the middle range, around 7,000, 8,000, who can hit 8 times, 9 times value. You're not going to get that out of West.
All right, time right there. Both of you guys timed that pretty well. It's almost like you were practicing or something like that. Listen, I think ultimately I'm going to have to go with Pierce on that one. I just think there's a lot. Surprisingly, I know Pierce. So often I disagree with you. I almost make a habit out of it. But I think ultimately you can really balance things out here tonight. So it's something to keep an eye on, obviously, as we get on with this thing. But we'll do another one of those coming up in a few minutes. Let's do a spotlight, one of our first here. Now, these 5 centers that you're going to see right here are maybe worth some extra consideration tonight after some careful analysis from our statistical experts. So do pay attention. Nick Jokic, 10,300. He's crushing the game in spite of all the injuries in Denver. You can see the chart here. He is on fire. That is what that logo means. Just like Russ Westbrook, James Harden, the Joker, a triple-double threat every single night. He had 17, 21, and 12 last game. It was absolutely absurd. Marc Gasol, 7,500, 10th at the position tonight despite averaging almost 40 DK points a game, so a real value there. Plus, he's averaged 56 DK points in 2 meetings with New Orleans. You have Steven Adams, 5,900. Knicks stink, obviously, and Adams had a double-double against them the last time he saw them, so you could find a little bit of value there. Greg Monroe, 5,400. More on him coming up in just a moment. And then Willie Hernan-Gomez, $5,000. He'll start again for the Knicks with Joakim Noah out. He's averaging more than 1 DK point per minute and has played anywhere between 20 and 36 minutes in 6 of his last 7 games. So, Jeff, Monroe, the featured player on our spotlight here, he's made 18 of 23 field goals his last 2 games, had 51 DK points the last game against the Nets. Good play tonight? What do you think?
Yeah, he's definitely someone I want to look at. I mean, maybe I'll wait till Pierce comes on to talk me out of it, but I think he's in a good spot. I mean, the Bucks are dealing with injuries, obviously. Last 2 games, he's really come through for them. So, I mean, I'm looking at him as one of the best values at center. I think overall at center tonight, too, it's a position I want to pay down for a bit. I don't think you have to pay way down for, but Nikolai Jokic now up over 10,000. I think guys like Marc Gasol, Hernan-Gomez, and Greg Monroe are ways you can save, and they have real upside. Though I think Greg Monroe in a really, really good spot against Brooklyn. I mean, pretty much any team who plays Brooklyn, their players in a good spot. But like I said, I'd like to hear Pierce's thoughts on this, but I'm definitely looking at Monroe as a top target.
Well, Pierce, he's teeing you up. What do you got?
Oh, yeah, I'll talk you out of this. I hate Jason Kidd. And if you look back at the stats, Greg Monroe had 2 big games about a month ago, and they followed that up with a 13-point dud. And then you don't know what Jason Kidd's going to do. I mean, yeah, he's looking good in the last 2 games. We have the Jabari Parker's out, so his usage is going to be up a little bit. And it's a pretty good spot against Brooklyn. But I just don't trust it. And when you've got so many games to choose from, you can get burned by missing the Greg Monroe pick. If Greg Monroe goes off, it's not going to kill you. You just got to make a bigger pick somewhere else. We're not talking about a small slate here. I mean, you can go cheap. I like Ed Davis out there in his matchup. I know Portland, Utah looks like a bad game, but Rudy Gobert and Ed Davis are both in a pretty good matchup to score some points there. I like that. And you can't go wrong with the Joker. Jokic is just as safe as possible. They've got plenty of injuries in Denver. He's going to get plenty of usage.
Remember, if you want to be part of the show, you can hit us up with your comments with the hashtag DKTV on Twitter. We will get to them shortly. All right, another chase fade, boys. This one is pretty interesting. Again, we hit on this earlier with Alex back in the newsroom. Harden has been eligible for either guard spot all year long, but for whatever reason, not the case. Only a point guard for this one tonight. Chase or fade using the beard at the point. Pierce, let's start with you.
Fade. First of all, I do know that Harden had 70 points in a game earlier this year against Miami, but it's a pace-down game. There's so many options at point guard. He's really expensive. I mean, I'm looking through my list. I got 7 guys that I like at point guard. If he's a shooting guard, yes, but he's not, so no.
Good timing. Jeff.
I'll chase James Harden, even though I do like Russell Westbrook as much or maybe better. I still think this is a big spot. This is a game with one of the highest projected point totals, and Houston has one of the highest implied totals on the board tonight. This sets up for James Harden in a close game, possibly, and I think it'll be a close game to put up a massive point total.
Got to cut you off right there. This is a tough one. It's a tough one. I just think ultimately the way I'm forced to look at it is you have so many options at the point and so few when it comes to shooting guards. You can't really go with James Harden because you're just screwing yourself in another position, unless, of course, you're just committing to kind of punting at that position, but we'll talk about that in a little while. Jeff, you got time to make up ground. That's the good thing. We're doing 5 or 6 of these things throughout the show, but down 2-0.
I mean, Pierce paid you off beforehand, I guess. It's fine.
Again, the timing is just, he's so succinct. It's been a beautiful thing. Let's get back to the spotlights, though. And due to the Harden news we just discussed, 2 guard position. It's thin. Maybe one that you'd have to search for value. I mean, really dig deep. DeMar DeRozan, our featured shooting guard. We'll get to him in just 1 second here. But Devin Booker, and you're going to see the list in a moment, 7,200 facing the Lakers with LA on a back-to-back at home. You can see it right here. Booker shoots like there is no tomorrow. He's taken fewer than 18 shots only once the last 9 games. Just heaving them up like he's Kobe. Pat Beverly, 5,600. He's averaging 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, along with nearly 17 points. Real points, of course, his last 3 games. Gary Harris, 4,900, 15 points per the last 6 while shooting 46% both from the field and from distance, plus the Nuggets are banged up. 5 players are out, so there's a lot of opportunity in that lineup. Nick Stauskas, 3,900, more than 30 minutes a game his last 6. He is burying 39% of his trays during the run. But on DeRozan, Jeff, 7,900. He's coming off an ejection last night. He is shooting 47% at home this year. It's, with last night's early exit, do you think it's going to be a spark? What do you expect here?
He did play like a lot of minutes last night, so even though he was ejected, here's the problem with DeMar DeRozan for me tonight. He's 7,900. He's not that expensive, but there's so many other guys I want to pay up for at other positions that for shooting guard, I really feel like it's so thin that I'd rather just take a cheap guy and pay up at other spots. I think DeMar DeRozan's the safest choice at shooting guard for sure. So probably the best floor of any player. But again, he's 7,900. There's so many other good players on this slate that I want to pay up for. I'm going to look at guys like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. I'm going to look at a guy like Norman Powell, maybe Shabazz Muhammad even out of Minnesota. I'm going to try and go cheap there. I still think that DeMar DeRozan's a good play. He's got the best floor probably for me, but I do think I'd rather just go cheap at shooting guard because the position is really it's not good tonight.
Pierce?
Yeah, I did not like DeMar DeRozan tonight. Just don't want to pay up. But with Serge Ibaka not suiting up, I think Patrick Patterson's out. You could see a little bit of a bump of usage here. And, I mean, really, he's kind of the main go-to guy right now, especially in this game with the limited injuries here, if you look at Toronto's lineup. But still, I would much prefer to go value. I mean, I'll read you a list of guys that I've got right here. Tyler Johnson playing an up-tempo game. He's been playing hot. Austin Rivers has been playing pretty well. And he went for 7X last time he faced Atlanta. Monte Ellis is on a bit of a roll, and Indianapolis has several injuries. You can see usage bump there. Tony Allen plays well at home. He's super cheap. And then Nick Stauskas, as you mentioned. I think there's just too much. I'd like to pay up at other positions. I'm going to punt and go value on shooting guard.
Well, let's see if there's been any sort of evolution when it comes to this stuff. It's a good time for us to check back into the DK Live newsroom with Alex Jankowski. Alex, talk to me. Anything new happening out there?
Yeah, I've had a couple things come through since we last spoke. Ty Lawson has continued to be out for the Kings. He's been battling that adductor strain in his leg. So Darren Collison will continue to just see a boatload of minutes, talking over 40. His salary, though, has gone up $2K over the last 10 games. He's now at $6,900. Andrew Bogut is back for the Mavericks. He'll get one game in before the All-Star break. He had missed the past 8. No word yet on any kind of minutes limit for him. Lavoy Allen officially out for the Pacers, who are already a little bit thin in the front court. No Terrence Ross for the Magic tonight, so neither Ibaka or Ross will make their debuts for their new teams after that trade yesterday. And then with the Hornets, Cody Zeller and Miles Plumlee are both out tonight. So Mike Tobey, who's on his second 10-day contract, will finally see some run. Bunch of front court issues in that game, man. So they're playing Toronto. Toronto, as we said, will be without Ibaka and Patrick Patterson. So maybe, Frank Kaminsky, Jonas Valanciunas, both of those two guys, maybe they'll be scooping up all the rebounds in that game.
All right, Alex, appreciate it. We'll continue to check in with you, of course, throughout the hour. But, Jeff, based on everything you just heard, any takeaways?
Not really. Everything kind of knew before. I mean, I think Frank Kaminsky is in a really, really good spot. He'll probably be slightly chalky for tournaments, but I mean, for cash games, I think he's 6,000 tonight. He really makes a lot of sense due to the injuries there. Darren Collison, 6,900. I know the usage with Collison and DeMar and Boogie Cousins is huge, but man, that's 18-point spread there. Like, good chance Sacramento gets blown out. So I think he's a bit risky play. It's really boom or bust there with Collison.
Pierce?
Yeah, I'm going to be staying away from that Golden State-Sacramento game with it being projected to be a huge blowout. And then Frank Kaminsky, I thought he was priced a little too high. I wasn't going to go there, but with Toronto thin in the front court, Frank Kaminsky's not the greatest down-low rebounder, but he gets his share of rebounds. He's got a lot more chances tonight. He's not afraid to take plenty of shots. He's going to be on the court with Zeller out. So even Kaminsky at his elevated price, I definitely think he's much more in play now.
All right, let's get back to the spotlights here on Hump Day, and the point guards represent our midpoint. We've already mentioned James Harden, exclusively a point guard, and it is a big story tonight. One of the things to keep an eye on when it comes to your lineups. We're not going to talk about him here at this moment, though. Steph Curry, 9,600, probably going to be low-owned after a dud Monday, though he is averaging 55 DK points against the Kings this year. These guys were just talking about it. Very well could be a blowout in that game in favor of the Dubs. Mike Conley, 7,500. He's got a great matchup. Pelicans have allowed the third most fantasy points to point guards this year, and Conley has gone over 33 DK points in 9 of his last 10 games. Again, you can see the He's on Fire logo right there. Jeff Teague, 7,400. He is 6th in the NBA with 8 assists a game, sort of revitalizing his career here this season. He has reached 5 times his salary in tournaments in 4 of 10. Ricky Rubio, our player to watch, we'll get back to him, and TJ McConnell, 5,100 with averages of 9, 6, and 4 in his last 8 games. But Rubio, 12 assists a game in his last 5, 16 last night in a loss to the Cavs. So, Jeff, what do you think? Can he keep it up tonight?
I mean, he definitely has the matchup, too. He's going up against Jameer Nelson and the Denver Nuggets. So I think Rubio makes a lot of sense. I mean, sometimes he feels like he lets down in these spots, but he's too cheap for the spot. Definitely like a cash game floor guy. I'd definitely take advantage of. I might lean Mike Conley in GPP. He's definitely going to get lower ownership there. I think he's got just as much upside in that game, like you mentioned, Adam. The guy I really like is TJ McConnell, too. If you're looking for a cheap flex play, going up against the Boston Celtics, you give it up to everyone, it seems like. So I really like McConnell. Rubio, definitely a safe choice. And Connolly, if you're looking to go off the board a little bit. Those are all value plays. I still think Russell Westbrook is a guy you want some exposure to tonight.
Pierce?
Yeah, I love Rubio a lot. I mean, you've got a paced-up game here. Denver, horrible defensive efficiency. They're horrible against guarding guards. And then also, I mean, they're shorthanded. They're not full strength. Rubio has hit 40 points in 4 of his last 5 games, playing really well, especially with Levine out. Against Denver earlier this year, I think he had a 7.6 return on value. He's one of those guys that he's around that 7,000, 8,000 range that can get you that 8x return. I know it's a back-to-back, and that should worry some people, but he's rolling right now, and I would not get off the Rubio train.
What do you suppose it is with this guy, just bigger picture thinking back throughout his career? And I know there have been a lot of injury issues, obviously, that goes without saying, but the lack of consistency, I mean, you have these little, like we were just talking about, these little 5-game spurts. It makes you wonder, Pierce, a little bit anyway. It makes me wonder, how long can he actually keep this up beyond tonight?
He's just had an erratic career. I mean, we remember when he didn't come to the NBA when he was drafted, and he's been injured here or there. And, playing for Minnesota really has not helped his career evolve either. He's on a hot streak, so I'd ride him right now. Is it going to last forever? Probably not, but having Karl-Anthony Towns on your team has definitely helped him out a good bit.
Yeah, Towns, Wiggins, not like Levine. It's not like there aren't guys he can pass to, that's for sure, generally when everybody's healthy. But while we're on point guards, I mentioned Steph Curry. Rough night last night, a rare rough night for the 2-time MVP. A blowout loss to the Nuggets. 11 points on 4 of 18 shooting, 1 of 11 from distance, but still averaging 24.5 points this month, shooting 48% overall, 42 from 3. So let's do a chase fade here. Talking about Steph Curry, both you guys, as usual, will be involved to get 15 seconds for each of you to answer, and we'll begin with Jeff. Curry will bounce back tonight against the Kings. Jeff, what do you think?
Oh, I'll fade that. I mean, he might play better and he might play well, but I don't think for fantasy he's going to bounce back. Look, I already went over the fact that Golden State's like a huge, huge favorite over the Sacramento Kings. Steph Curry could only play 3, he might play 2.5 quarters, and he might play well, but he might only get 30 fantasy points. I like Isaiah Thomas better at the price.
And Pierce?
I'm fading it. He killed me in that Denver game. Just absolutely crushed me. Klay Thompson's out. He's going against Denver. What a great time for him to carry my GPP team. He's the only guy that didn't come through for me. He'll have a bounce-back game, but in the blowout, he's just not going to play enough minutes. Can't take anybody in Golden State.
All right, we're going to give that one to you, Jeff.
I was too early, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, listen, you came up a little short. Plus, it seemed like there was a little bit of a personal vendetta there. We don't need that. We don't need that in this game. Steph Curry didn't do anything to you. Is it his ugly shoes? Is that the problem?
That game was terrible. What a letdown that was.
It was absolutely awful. All right, let's go back to the spotlights here, and of course, more chase fades to come. Small forward spotlight. Giannis Antetokounmpo. I stuttered all over that thing. Nearly 11 grand, Greek freak. Enough said. We all know what he's capable of, and we'll talk more about Kawhi Leonard coming up in just a moment as you can see the list. Again, a couple of guys that have been scorching hot. That's how they find their way onto this list. Another one, Andrew Wiggins. Blew up last night, has at least 42 DK points his last 4 games. He has shot 50% or better in each of those as well. He is 7,900. Mike Beasley, 5,500, 23 points. That is real points in 31 minutes his last game. And come on, Nets suck. Larry Nance Jr., 4,200, consistent minutes, fills out the box score. The Suns should make for a fast-paced game, so there's the potential opportunity there, obviously. But as for Leonard, getting back to him, again, our featured guy, 8,900. He is averaging 50 DK points his last 5 games. His salary, surprisingly, hasn't budged much in spite of that. So, good pick as opposed to the other options. What do you think, Pierce?
Yeah, I love Kawhi Leonard today. People just don't roster him. And on a day where we have 14 games, people are going to continue to not roster Kawhi Leonard. He'll quietly get you your 50, possibly 60 points. Very high floor. He is the guy on the Spurs that pretty much pushes everything. And Orlando is just not really that good of a team. They're going to be shorthanded. He's really, really safe. I don't see why you just click him and move on.
Jeff?
Yeah, Pierce and I had this conversation, I think, last week at some point about Leonard, and he was cheaper at that point. So, when he was 8,200, I think I was more on board. I still think he's fine as a cash game play. I think for tournaments, I could see San Antonio just blowing out Orlando tonight because they're not good. Worry a little bit about that, I guess. So maybe for tournaments, I'd go another way. His price did bump up a little bit. Safe pick, though. He's such a good player. One of my favorite players in the NBA, so it kind of pains me to fade him for fantasy sometimes. But I think tonight for tournaments, I would probably go another way. But for like a cash game floor play, makes a ton of sense right now. He's so good.
We're going to get to people's questions in just a moment. But you know what, guys? Just because we're talking about Kawhi Leonard, and I think this is a kind of popular debate that happens a lot of the time outside the fantasy world, so we're allowed to do that time to time, especially in an hour-long program like this. If you're starting a franchise, starting an NBA franchise, I don't know if Kawhi Leonard is your number one guy necessarily, Jeff, but how high up is he on that list when you're thinking about him and Towns and Davis if he's healthy, and obviously, some of the guys that have been around for a few years and beyond, the Westbrooks, the Currys, LeBron even at this point, some people would still pick given what he is capable of for at least a few more years and on and on. How high up on that list is Kawhi Leonard?
Yeah, if you take age into the factor and stuff like that, he might be number one for me. He's definitely probably in the top 3. He's the kind of guy you like to build around. So, and for fantasy, it's good too because he's like we talked about. He's such a high floor play because he doesn't just get his points from scoring. He gets it from rebounding and steals and blocks and everything. So he's a great player, like you said. He's one of my favorites just to watch. I like guys like that who can do it all. So, definitely top 3 for me. I don't know what Pierce thinks.
Well, Pierce?
Kawhi Leonard's a good player, but I don't think I would build around him. I would much rather I would start with an imaginary player, but a healthy big man is how I would start my franchise. I think Marc Gasol is a good example of he's basically sustained Memphis into the playoffs every single year. You can get a guy that's maybe not quite as good as Kawhi Leonard, but you put him next to a really good big man, and you're good to go. Just value over replacement, I guess, kind of guys. But I'm going to take a big center.
It is remarkable, though, how the Spurs just keep churning them out. Doesn't matter where they find him in the draft. They find him. They make him last. This will be a guy that will be in that lineup for the next 10 to 15 years, whatever it is. You go from Robinson to Duncan to Kawhi, and you got all these guys in between, Parker, obviously. But whatever. We could spend a whole hour just on that issue alone. We've got a couple chase fades in the power forward spotlight still left before lineup lock. And, of course, we want to hear from you. Get the best advice possible. You can post your questions on Twitter with the hashtag DKTV. We'll find them, we'll read them, we'll answer them. It's really easy as that. First, though, more knowledge. I spoke earlier with DK analyst Adam Levitan about lineup strategy, so check it out. All right, Levy, huge slate tonight, 14 games. We've been talking about it all show long. So first and foremost, what lineup building strategy do you favor most? What's your thinking when there are so many games?
Yeah, well, my first thought when I saw it was going to be a 14-game slate, I was like, oh, this is great. This is going to be stars and scrubs for sure, because with so many teams, we have to assume there's going to be a lot of injury situations that open up a lot of value. However, on this particular slate, I don't see, as of right now, a lot of really good, cheap value. Yeah, we have Juancho and we have some other guys in the 4K to 5K range, but I don't see guys in the 3K to 4K range that I really like. So given that, it's hard to do a true stars and scrubs construction. I think people who try to force in a lot of really high-priced stars are going to struggle if they try to also force in some really bad scrub type plays.
Well, and on top of that, it's a really rough slate for shooting guards with James Harden exclusively at the point. So how do you evaluate whether to maybe punt on a position and just go for value? How do you look at that?
Yeah, so we have to think about the top guys from a projection standpoint. Do they project well or do they project neutrally or poorly? And if they project neutrally or poorly, I don't want to make a mistake spending really high on a player who doesn't have the exact right matchup, exact right minute and usage situation. So I'm fine with punting, and shooting guard is a spot you certainly can do it. The problem is that a lot of these guys aren't involved in their team's offense except for shooting the ball, hence the name shooting guard. But if they're only shooting the ball and they go cold one night, they can really leave a big snowflake in our roster. So I think some of the guys in the mid-range, like an Oladipo, like a Wes Matthews, even like a Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, guys that we know are going to play 30, 35, maybe even 40 minutes and maybe run into some assists, rebounds, steals. I feel a little bit more comfortable with their floor, at least for cash games.
Serge Ibaka went from the Magic to the Raptors. Terrence Ross and a pick went the other way. Maybe at some point we'll talk about that trade because it was a little goofy. But after a big deal, how do you judge giving a guy exposure in his first game?
Yeah, well, we have this question tonight with Plumlee on the Nuggets. You know, the Blazers and the Nuggets made that trade, the Plumlee for Nurkic trade. And Plumlee, I mean, given the way that Denver's injury situation has shaken out tonight and given the matchup at home against the Wolves, Plumlee may be asked to play 18, 20, 21 minutes. He's only 4K. So I don't think that Denver necessarily wants to throw guys in, wants to throw Plumlee right at the rotation. I don't think in general coaches want to get a guy off the plane from a different team and throw him in for 25, 30 minutes. But in emergency situations, I think they might have to. But generally speaking, I think guys in the first game off of a trade are generally pretty bad ideas. I'd like to wait and see.
All right, Adam Levitan, thanks, man. Good luck with your lineups.
Yeah, good luck tonight.
All right, Levy, huge slate tonight, 14 games. We've been talking about it all show. All right, great stuff there from Levy. Your questions coming up here on Pre-Lock Live, I promise. We've got some in the hopper. We'll get to those. But first, Pierce, Jeff back with me, and let's hit on what I just discussed with Adam earlier in the day. When it comes to lineup building strategy, what do you guys favor most with a big slate like this? Which is, I mean, you get these so infrequently in the NBA, obviously, but with the All-Star break coming up here just a couple of days away, they're really piling it on just a couple of games tomorrow. 14 games, all but 2 teams playing. Lineup strategy, Pierce, what generally would you look for?
Well, one of the things I'm going to do is I'm staying away from stars and scrubs. I'm staying away from, in particular, the sexy picks, the picks that everybody's going to take. If I go in the mid-range, these are the guys that no one really is crazy about. Will Barton, who could have yet again another big night. Eric Bledsoe, who looks good, but people aren't completely in love with him like they are with Russell Westbrook or Harden or Giannis Antetokounmpo. So I'm going middle, and the guys are kind of hidden in between.
Jeff?
I'm kind of the opposite direction. I mean, normally on a slate this big, you'd see a lot more value plays than we have tonight, I think. So it really would lend itself to stars and scrubs. But I still think it's on this slate, it's a night when you can pay up for Russell Westbrook. I think Russell Westbrook's going to be under-owned compared to what he should be. And then you look around and you look for those sort of last-minute replacement guys, or guys who are going to be getting more minutes than they usually do. That's what the advantage is of a big slate. There's just more value plays lying around. And I think on a night like that, I'm still going to employ that strategy. I still think it's the right one. I do think Pierce makes a good point, though, about tournaments. With everyone sort of looking for construction like that, if you just go with the midline, avoid some of these like over 10K guys, I mean, you're definitely going to have a more unique lineup and definitely could be more optimal. But it's really hard for me to fade guys like Westbrook and Giannis, the Greek freak. I mean, we haven't talked about him yet, but he's playing Brooklyn tonight. So, I mean, only 10,800. That's a guy I want to get some exposure to.
I feel underdressed looking at you guys. I'm going to be honest with you. You both look so nice.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course, we all know how it works with video. You're probably just sitting in your offices there with shorts on. But hey, since shooting guard's a thin position tonight, how do you decide whether to punt on it, go for value, or I mean, really, there aren't a lot of options, right? You've got the top guys that we talked about before. Maybe you could cut the price in half or even in thirds. How do you look at it, Jeff?
Yeah, it's exactly what Adam was talking about and what you just kind of mentioned too. There's so many other positions I'd rather pay up for. I mean, literally every other position, I feel like there's guys I want to pay up for, even if it's just in the 7K range. I think at shooting guard, you cut your losses kind of thing. And there are some interesting names out there. Some of them might maybe a little bit more risk than you want, but at the same time, some of them have upside too. Like a guy like Norman Powell might be getting more minutes and in Toronto with some of the injuries there. So, when a position is that thin, I usually look for a cheap guy who's going to get me a decent return. That's why I like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope out of Detroit. One of my favorite fantasy players. Scores across all the major categories. Always seems to get like 35 minutes. And that's big. So, I mean, you're pretty much guaranteed like a floor of 20 points with this guy. And sometimes he puts up big nights. So it's kind of like a Kentavious Caldwell-Pope night for me at shooting guard.
Do you feel the same way?
DeRozan and Barton, probably your safest in cash. But GPPs, I'm going to go punt value. And I know, like Adam said, I mean, they're shooting guards and they're very risky because they can be cold. But if you pick the right one, you're going to be in a really good spot tonight, especially if you want to spend on the other positions, which when you look at point guard, there's so many places to spend money, and there's several big men, and you got several small forwards you can spend on. I'm going to save my money at shooting guard, try to get the right guy who's shooting well. And there's been several guys I mentioned earlier who've been hitting and are in halfway decent spots, so I'm going to save up.
How about the Harden effect here? As we're talking about that question, if let's say it was status quo for what it's been for James Harden all year, would you view him as a guy that you're willing to pay up for at the shooting guard position, or would you kind of view it the same way? Would you look at it and say, well, we've got all these options that we can pay up for at the point, we can find some value with the two guard, so he's going to be kind of under-owned maybe either way? I mean, am I talking out of turn, so to speak, or do you look at it that way, Pierce?
No, I agree. Some people are really upset about him being moved over just because of the fact that they don't see him as a shooting, or they don't see him as a point guard officially. They think he's a shooting guard. But in reality, I mean, you've got a utility position. You've got a guard position. If you want him in your lineup with Russell Westbrook, which I don't think you should do, but if you want it, you can make it happen. People are just – sometimes we make a big deal because we got to talk about something.
Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll keep his ownership lower tonight than it would have been for sure. Maybe even like cut it to a pretty interesting spot. But I mean, Pierce is right. There's three flex spots. Like you can still get James Harden in there if you want and use like another value point guard or something. So not like the hugest deal to me. At least I don't think it's that big a deal. But I think ownership wise, it's definitely going to make him lower owned than he would have been tonight if he was double guard eligible, because he would have been a popular play at shooting guard just because it's so thin. So
the other thing we talked about with Levitan, a couple of trades recently, how do you feel about targeting players just in general? Never mind the specific guys that are going tonight or not going tonight, obviously. How do you feel about targeting players in their first games with a new team, Pierce?
No, I don't think anyone feels comfortable doing it, but if you're in a GVP and you want to take a chance on Plumlee tonight, then yeah, maybe. But boy, I would not feel comfortable doing that. I wouldn't ever feel comfortable doing that. I don't think you have to do it on a huge slate like tonight. Just go somewhere else and save yourself the grief.
So that's not a narrative that you like? I mean, among the different narratives, the whatever, time zone changes or playing a former opponent or hometown or da-da-da-da-da. The motivation of debut with a new team. You don't like that narrative?
Bobbleheads I'll go with. Birthdays I'll go with. Birth of the first son, I'll go with. And then that's about it. Mother's birthday.
What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, I usually fade the traded player narrative. I mean, there's too many weird things, like players living out of hotels, the new surroundings, it just puts them off. So, athletes are creatures of habit. They don't like change. So when things change, I just tend to avoid them for at least a few games and see how things shake out. Sometimes you'll get like a massive game right off the bat, but generally it usually doesn't lend itself to good things for fantasy.
All right, we'll get back to Chase Fade, Spotlight, all that good stuff in a minute. But as promised, let's take some questions from our audience. If you happen to have a question about how to set your lineup, be it specific about a particular player, a general lineup building strategy, whatever it may be, you can weigh in. Use the hashtag DKTV on Twitter, and we'll be sure to get to it before we are up. And we've got, another 20 minutes before lineups lock, so you can get those in. But let's start taking them now. Our first question here. Let's get a look at it. All right, is the strategy, this one from AceMasters21 on Twitter, is the strategy on grand prize pool tournaments on a big slate to focus only on high-paced games with an over-under of at least 220. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely want to target the higher output games. I mean, you don't have to necessarily stack your entire lineup with them, but you definitely want to look at those first kind of thing and see how many guys of those games you can fit in. But really the strategy should just be looking for the best value plays throughout. Now, most of the value plays should be coming from those higher output games. So definitely use the implied point totals and the point totals overall to sort of lend yourself which games you want to be targeting first, but don't necessarily have to limit yourself to just those games.
Pierce?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I agree with Jeff. You can't just knock games off. I mean, a lot of us do that just to make our lives easier, so we don't have to do as much research. So it's just kind of a way of being lazy. I mean, you look at the Memphis game, yeah, it's Memphis, they'll play slow. But if you really think about it, Mike Conley's going to be on the court a lot because Drew Holiday is on fire, so you're going to want to have Mike Conley on the court as much as possible to contain him. And that means on the offensive end, Mike Conley is going to be touching the ball a lot, and there's a low total on this. Or you look at the Portland game against Utah, and everyone hates playing against Utah, but think about it. You got Ed Davis, who's at the minimum salary. He's going to play a ton of minutes tonight because they're thin in the front court. And, he gets about a point per minute. And then you look at the other side, you got Rudy Gobert, who's going to probably get 20 rebounds tonight. Again, these are games with low over-unders that no one else wants to play in. So maybe you can take advantage of playing in the games that are less desirable.
All right, let's take our next question here. That's a good start, though, for us. Nice complicated question. Rounded it out with a whole bunch of terms that we don't even typically hear on these types of programs. So it's good. Be able to give you this next one here in just a moment. Again, DKTV, the hashtag on Twitter. From Matt Presto, what game is the stack tonight? I like this question. We haven't even remotely touched on this issue yet. Jeff?
I mean, the game is Minnesota-Denver. I mean, I assume Pierce will probably agree with me. There's probably a couple other we could talk about, but there's so much going on in this game. You have Cat versus the Joker at center, obviously, two of the most highest producing centers in fantasy. Then you have Andrew Wiggins and Ricky Rubio going with no Zach LaVine. These guys' usage are going up. And then on Denver's side of the ball, there's injuries to deal with. There's so many guys. Will Barton is a guy we barely even mentioned tonight. I know Tyson Chandler's questionable, but I don't know how much he's going to play him if he goes. So that is the game that I'd want to stack tonight for sure.
Pierce? You agree?
Yeah, it's Minnesota-Denver and everything that Jeff just said right there. But I will throw another one out here, and this is probably a little too cute, but when we're talking about a big GPP with a ton of games, Los Angeles and Phoenix is going to go overlooked tonight. It really shouldn't. We've got a big point total coming out of this one. And the reason why people don't want to play it's because the Lakers basically spread their minutes out to everyone. I mean, it's borderline socialism. I think Luke Walton, when he was in his mother's womb, was listening to the Grateful Dead, and his dad was reading Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto. The only person you probably can count on Lou Williams, but if Larry Nance is healthy, that's a possibility. But it's really sneaky play there. Eric Bledsoe on the Phoenix side, maybe even Devin Booker. And picking the right Laker tonight could be huge.
Well, we just took a deep dive into Bill Walton right there.
Swaggy P. Where's our Swaggy P question? Is that in the queue?
Yeah, I'm sure it's coming. Before we get to the third question, though, I'm going to ask you one, sort of the opposite one of that, and this just comes from me, which is the game that you want to avoid? Those are the games that you mentioned that, maybe you'll lean on for a stack. What's the game that you are just staying away from? Or maybe there's one guy, Pierce.
I'm going to stay away from Golden State Sacramento because it is looking like a blowout. And Sacramento's played really well given all the injuries they've had, but I don't see them sticking around in this game, and we're going into the All-Star break, so the minutes are going to be crazy. We're going to see a lot of bench players probably playing a lot of time here, so I don't want anything to do with that game. No one's really going to blow up, I don't think. And if they do, it's going to be hard to predict.
Jeff, same, different?
No, the game I want to avoid is Dallas-Detroit. I want nothing to do with that game. Maybe Andre Drummond, I guess, at 7,600 could go off there. But from Dallas, no. That is a bad game.
Buying these rumors, Drummond could be on the trade block with the deadline 8 days away?
Never know. I like Andre Drummond. He gets a lot of rebounds.
All right, you gave us a lot of concrete stuff right there. Let's get back to Chase Spades. We mentioned Andrew Wiggins a little while back in that game, whether or not you like the Minnesota contest or not. He is 7,900 tonight against Denver. Again, this is a game that these guys love if you're thinking stack. Chase or fade, Jeff, Andrew Wiggins will return value tonight. What do you got?
Yeah, I got to chase it. Andrew Wiggins isn't a guy that I like to use that often because he kind of is like one-dimensional. But no Zach LaVine in the lineup. His usage has gone up. And he's playing Denver. I mean, he really, needs 40 points to get 5 times value here? He'll probably get 6 or maybe even 7. So, yeah, I'm in on Andrew Wiggins tonight for sure.
Pierce?
Oh, I'm sorry to hear. Well, it's not very interesting when we both chase, but I don't see how you could possibly fade this. You got to chase. He scored 50 points in his last 4 games. Levine out. Wiggins' usage is through the roof. Playing in Denver, up tempo. Denver is shorthanded. He doesn't need that much. He's going to hit 50. I guarantee it.
Well, I don't know if you're both.
3 seconds left. Play him.
Good for you. Checking out the clock. Hey, if you're both chasing, I mean, either there's a winner or there's no winner, right? So I guess it's a draw.
Pierce gave out the hyper chase though because he guaranteed it. So
I guarantee it. Lock it in. He's got to hit value. How does he not hit value tonight in this game?
I agree. Actually, I mean, if he doesn't hit 40 points, I'd be shocked.
I'm not saying it's back to back, but Thibodeau plays these guys 40 minutes a night. Maybe it's the Denver thin air that shuts him down, but I doubt it.
Yeah, I think that's the expectation. We've got about 14 minutes till lineups lock. If you have questions, DKTV on Twitter. That is the hashtag. Be sure to get them in, obviously. And we'll get more coming up before the end of the show. But final spotlight. Let's go to the power forwards. DeMarcus Cousins, $11,300. A lot of money, obviously. $11,300, but he had a monster game last night. We talked about it before. 72.5 DK points on 40 real points, 12 boards, 8 dimes, averaging 53 fantasy points against the Dubs this year. You got LaMarcus Aldridge right behind him, so from DeMarcus to LaMarcus, 6,300. He has at least 28 DK points in 10 in a row. He has been a better rebounder on the road as well than at home. Orlando, a lousy rebounding team, 26th in opponent rebounds per game, 24th in rebounding rate. Frank Kaminsky still taking advantage of Cody Zeller being out with that quad injury. He's starting in place of him. He's played at least 32 minutes a game his last 5, averaged as many DK points as that as well. Frank the Tank, 6K, so you can argue value right there. And again, that little icon there, minutes for Dario Saric. Obviously, he's at 5,800 as you can see. But Joel Embiid out for the Sixers. Jahlil Okafor could be back. Even still, Saric has found his stride recently. 38 DK points in 3 straight. Channing Frye, though, our featured guy, and even $5,000, 33 minutes, 42.5 fantasy points last night with Kevin Love out, and his salary barely moved. So, would you guys ride this momentum, Pierce?
Yeah, will he get 42 points again tonight? I don't know, but we'll see. 35 points, that's 7x, so definitely take that at 5,000. You know, he's got more minutes. He's going to have a usage bump with Kevin Love out. And then you look at the other side, Indiana is dealing with their own injuries. LaVoy Allen, I think, is out tonight. Thad Young is out against the Spurs in their last game. They gave up 30 points in 22 minutes to David Lee, another 22 points to Dedmon. So I don't think Channing Frye is going to have much of a problem. Now, you do worry that if the three-pointers aren't falling, then Frye's going to run into some trouble here. But he's going to get his rebounding opportunity. He should get enough usage. He might actually get more minutes if this thing turns into a blowout, too.
Jeff?
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't think I can trust Channing Frye to do this again. I also take issue with the fact because he's going to be so highly owned. So I know the spot is good. I mean, Cleveland, Indiana is actually a good matchup to target too tonight. It's one we haven't talked about too much. But, for me, I think I'd rather go Dario Saric going up against the Celtics. I kind of like that game. I like targeting players against Boston. It's not that big of a point spread either, so it might not be a blowout there. So I think I would lead Saric or maybe Frank Kaminsky. Maybe Channing Frye for cash games. He's not a guy I can really trust to put up another massive game, so I'm okay fading him. The price is right, though, on Channing Frye. I'll definitely give you guys that. So.
All right, we've only got one more chase fade and then back to your questions. And, of course, the final 10 minutes here of the program. We'll get some other thoughts from our analysts and Alex back in the DK Live newsroom as well. But, again, last chase fade and then your questions. You can leave them with the hashtag DKTV. DeMarcus Cousins averaging 27, 12, and 8 this month. Will he stay hot in Golden State? Or I guess I should say, let's make it more declarative, right? He will stay hot in Golden State. Chase or fade? Pierce.
I will chase if by hot you mean he kicks Draymond Green in the crotch. But if you're just meaning regular play, I'm going to say fade. I think they get blown out or get behind, and they just bench him and go into the All-Star break and not really risk injuring any of the players because they've been playing shorthanded for the last 2 weeks anyway.
Jeff?
I'll chase it. I mean, I don't think DeMarcus Cousins is a must play, but I still think he'll put up an okay game. I mean, even if it is a blowout, he might, go off for like 40 fantasy points in the first half or something. He's just playing so well, and I mean, like you said, the usage is insane. So I'll chase the fact he still has a good game. I don't necessarily think he's a must play tonight.
All right, you know what? I'm going to go with Pierce. I think he's going to put up, or Jeff, I'm sorry. I'm going to go with Jeff. I think he's going to put up a good game. I think, he's, yes, there is the concern that he gets benched if it's a blowout, something like that. And I don't know. I guess
you said my name first. It doesn't count. I shouldn't get the win.
Yeah, well, that was because what can I say? I was looking at you. I fell into a trap. You just those dreamy eyes, obviously. But look, I'm going
gaze,
with I'm going with Jeff because I like Cousins in this game. I don't think there's hardly anybody else on that team that's going to put up big numbers against Golden State, and there's still that presence in the middle that the Warriors do have some degree of trouble defending. So. This is kind of disappointing a little bit because we did, 5 of these chase fades, and because you guys elected to operate the same way on one of them, I picked each of you twice, so I guess it's a full-on draw for chase fade for this opening show.
Well, Luke Walton would be happy with that, so.
I will fade it, yeah.
Doesn't need to be a winner, right?
A loaf of bread for all.
Yeah.
All right, questions. DKTV is the hashtag on Twitter if you have any. I know we've got at least one more here. Let's take a look at what it is for these guys. You can get your questions answered by Pierce, by Jeff, and see what it is for your lineup building needs, strategy, whatever it may be as you inch closer to locking that lineup. We'll give you that question here coming up in just a moment. And then, of course, we'll get back to Alex in the newsroom. Power forward spotlight, obviously. We want you to see that's important. It's important. You don't want to forget about these guys. Here you go. From Matt Farina _0, I guess. Do you guys think the Norman Powell will see a lot more minutes now that T. Ross is gone? What do you got, Jeff?
Yeah, I hope so, and I hope he sees some minutes tonight too. It makes sense. I mean, he's a good sort of stretch 3 player. Moves around the court well. I mean, he's a guy who can sort of fill in for DeMar DeRozan when he's getting rest too. So I think it makes a lot of sense that he'll start to see more minutes, and hopefully it starts tonight.
I think he might get more minutes, but I don't know if they're really worthwhile minutes because he's going to be on the court with DeRozan and Lowry and probably Valanciunas and even DeMar Carroll. So he actually might be on the court at the wrong possible time. I mean, we got really in love with Powell and even Ross early this year, but that was when DeRozan was out. So his minutes will go up, but I don't know if it's going to help him too much.
Another one just coming in here. I'll just give you this here. We won't bother with the graphic. Just all of the different games that there are. The 14, we've spoken about a number of them individually, obviously. But when you're strategizing, when you're jumping in, beginner contest, that sort of thing, how many lineups would you set? And I realize I'll take away the disclaimer that either of you could obviously give me, which is, well, how much do you want to put in? How much do you want to invest? Let's remove that. In an ideal world, how many lineups would you like to set when you have so many options at your disposal with a 14-game lineup? Pierce.
I don't know. I think if you're starting to build a bunch of lineups tonight, you'll just go crazy. It's almost impossible to cover all of your bases with so many players to choose from. If you want me to give you a number, I don't know. I think a regular player would be happy with 10 lineups. But it's hard. It's just hard to judge on who we're talking about playing here.
Jeff.
No, just do one. I mean, if you're a little bit overwhelmed tonight, there's no reason why you have to do more than that. I mean, yeah, you're not ever going to get exposure to every player on the slate, right? Even if there's only 3 games. So, just pick the players that you do your research, pick the players that you think have the highest projected total for the night, and go with that. I mean, obviously, if you're playing a big GPP and you're going to enter more and you want to have more exposure or something like that, go for it. But really, if you're deciding, you're on the fence, or you're just thinking about entering some 50-50s or heads up, just make one solid lineup that you like and go with it. Doesn't matter how many games are on the slate. The point of this is still just pick the best lineups, and you can do that with just one lineup every night. Sometimes it's easier to do that too because you're limiting yourself to a certain group of players rather than expanding your core group.
This is good. We'll go right back to you with this one, Jeff, here. The All-Star break is coming up. Teams won't play for about a week. How in the hell am I going to fill my time? What am I going to do without basketball?
Oh, well, have you introduced yourself to daily fantasy golf yet? Because that's one of the best sports for fantasy. So go on over to the Playbook app and listen and read my articles.
Pierce.
Okay, I'll play. Daily Fantasy NASCAR is available at DraftKings this Saturday night. The Daytona Clash. We've got a GPP, I think $15,000 maybe the first place. We'll just jump on there, and they get the Daytona 500 coming up next weekend, so we're excited.
Just a couple of humble brags. Terrific. One final check in the DK Live newsroom. Alex Jankowski, may have to wake him up. Give me something good, Alex. Injuries, lineup changes. What's happening out there?
Well, I'll give you some stuff. I can't tell you whether, how great it is. The news hadn't exactly flown in recently. I guess a lot of people just said, we'll stick with the lineups we got this last game before the All-Star break. Kevin Seraphin is confirmed as the starter for the Pacers tonight at the 4. However, sounds like CJ Miles actually might get some run at the 4. He's shooting guard and small forward eligible at 3,900 tonight. Maybe the Pacers just think, well, Channing Frye kind of spaces the floor for the Cavs, so we can kind of, not have to worry about having two guys in the paint, have a smaller guy out there on the wing. Eric Gordon and Ryan Anderson, both good to go as expected for the Rockets. Anderson just had that weird injury where he cut his thumb taking out the trash. When it happened, he had said he lopped off part of his thumb, but I'm not exactly sure if I'm buying that, if he is not going to miss any time at all with the injury. And then this last note actually plays a little bit to that last question from our reader. Toronto coach Dwayne Casey has said Norm Powell will absorb Terrence Ross's minutes. However, he wants them to be a little bit of a different focus. He said he wants them to focus more on defense than on shooting. So kind of to what Pierce said in terms of he will be getting more minutes, but will it actually help him offensively and more importantly, DK-wise? Doesn't look like it.
That thumb injury, man, just goes to show you, and this is a lesson to all of these guys. If you have that kind of money, you don't need to be a regular person. Pay somebody to take out your trash, whatever it takes. You got to stay healthy. Bubble wrap yourself.
Yeah, and I saw a photo of it from shoot-around earlier today. It was pretty heavily bandaged, but hasn't affected his shot at all. And obviously, he's a guy who needs, his shot to be able to go. So he says it's fine. We'll see how it goes.
All right, Alex, thank you very much, sir. Enjoy the rest of your evening. You got a couple minutes to check your all of your insights, obviously, over these last couple of minutes, so you can make sure you're perfecting things ahead of this this first stretch of games throughout the evening. But let's go back here quickly to both Pierce and Jeff very quickly, because we only have a few minutes left in the program. But as I always like to ask you when we're doing this type of thing, must play and top fade for the night. And again, you have 28 teams to choose from. Let's do the must plays first. Jeff.
Oh, it's a tough choice between Westbrook and Giannis for me. I'll go with Giannis just because he's cheaper and he's playing the Brooklyn Nets. For a value play, I'll go with, again, it's so tough. I like Larry Nance Jr. as a tournament play, but I'll go with Dario Saric.
Interesting. Pierce.
Yeah, I was going to go with Antetokounmpo too as well, and I'm going to stick with him. He's going to be my must-play tonight. Just you can't overlook playing Brooklyn and the fact that Jabari Parker's out there. I'm going to fade Russell Westbrook. I think he still has a good night, 60 points, but I don't think he really blows up. And if we're talking point per dollar, I don't think he's in the optimal lineup, and I bet someone has a pretty close to optimal lineup in GP. Value-wise, I will go with how about Monte Ellis on the Pacers, who are a little bit shorthanded. If he can get the shot to fall like he has lately, he's in a pretty good spot. I'll tell you this. I'm not feeling so hot right now. I've been feeling that a lot of players are sitting. That's why we're not getting any news.
Yeah, it could be a big part of it. All right, in the final minute here, I understand we've got one more question. Let's see if we can sneak this thing in. Again, lineups are just about to lock, so I hope it's a good one. I hope it's an important one. I hope we can provide you 10 seconds of analysis, whatever it may be. We'll see if we can sneak this thing in here. Otherwise, people will be stuck. You won't be able to do it. Nah, we're going to skip it. We got it. All right, we'll do it. From Rock Out Magazine.
Love him. Love Juan tonight.
You're good on, yeah. You guys jump right in. You like Juan?
Yes, absolutely. I think he's the better of the Hernan Gomez's tonight.
Yeah,
doesn't say much.
On Wilson Chandler.
All right, lineups are locked, so it doesn't matter. I hope people didn't, wait for that question, obviously, because would have screwed up the whole thing for you. Look, it's been a lot of fun. We're going to do this frequently throughout the season. In fact, the plan is to do it a few times a week, so make sure you keep it with us here on DKTV and, of course, throughout all of your different platforms where you can find all of this DraftKings television content. But my thanks to Alex Jankowski back in the newsroom, Pierce, and Jeff, you guys as well. Enjoy your evenings. Good luck with your lineups. Thanks for taking time out for us.
You're welcome.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, guys, good luck, and keep it locked in as always to DKTV, the DK Live app, DK Playbook, all of it. I'm Adam Kaufman. We'll talk to you again real soon.